Okay, we're going to talk about anonymity. Anonymity is a typical manner in which you talk to other people online, and it's a typical manner in which you receive information online. When you seek information through, for instance, Google search engine, Google doesn't know who you are. Okay. Well, if you logged on, then Google will know who you are, but you don't have to log in to do Google search. And also, when you make a web page, unless you state your name on it, people don't have to know who you are, who authored all the contents on that web page. So, and there are two different things. Real name versus anonymous systems. So I told you that the typical ways that you communicate online is anonymous, but there are ways that you can do it by showing your identity. There is a spectrum of degree or the extent to which you can reveal your identity. At one end of the spectrum, there is a real name system where you present your official name and any credential that backs up your official identity, like your address, your school ID number, or a lot of times the number of your government-issued identification. Now, why do you do some things on the real name basis, and why do you do some things on anonymous basis? What do you do on a real name basis? Well, let's start with something easier. What do you do on an anonymous basis? I mean, let's forget about online or offline. What are the things? Can you think of examples of activities that you engage in anonymously? Survey? Okay, well, some of the surveys are anonymous surveys. Like surveys that you fill out at the end of the semester evaluating me, you do it anonymously so that I don't have to punish you for giving me a low mark. Okay, well, what other things? Who went jogging this morning? Anybody? Okay, all right, good. Did you do it anonymously? No. Why did you do it? I mean, what do you mean you didn't do it anonymously? Did you tell everybody your name as you're running? My name is, yeah? Did you have your name tag on it?
I did it as I used to be.
Okay. But you didn't tell, as you're running, you didn't tell people, who you are, right?
The unique Lobson is just running.
Okay. So, unless people knew you in the past, unless people knew you enough in the past that they could tell who you are by your face, you ran anonymously, right? People not familiar with your face will not know who you are when they saw you, right? What other things do you do anonymously? Who smokes here? Buying cigarettes, do you do anonymously? Do they check your ID when you buy cigarettes? No. Okay, sounds like you smoke. You have experience. How about, going into a bar to get a drink? Do you do anonymously? Sometimes they card you, right? Some bars will ask for identification when they have reason to believe that you are on the borderline of 18 or 19 in Korea. I'm now in that age group where I'm happy to be carded. But if you run around, if you buy a cigarette, if you buy drinks, if you go jogging, it is anonymous to the extent that, the people not familiar with your face will not recognize your identity, but people who know you, right, will recognize. So it's not fully anonymous, but it's anonymous to an extent. Now, what do you do on a real name basis? Or what can you do only on a real name basis? Banking. Good. Why would the banks not open a bank account without receiving your identification? Why would banks not open an anonymous bank account?
Because you never know what those people are going to do with that money.
Banks are worried about what you're going to do with the money. You may be dealing drugs. Yeah? Well, there are banks that open anonymous accounts, like banks in Swiss. Now, even there are different levels of anonymity. I mean, the real reason that banks always ask for identification is because of what they do. They keep your money and they have to give back only to you, not someone else. So they have to have some way of making sure that they don't return the money to a wrong person. But to make sure that only the person who opened the account can withdraw money, right? The method of making sure that only the bank account holder withdraw the money does not require real name, right? What the banks can do is just give you some token of identity, whatever that is, right? Without really knowing who you are, right? The banks can just give you, I don't know, it can be a small rock of a random shape, right? And only the person who has possession of the rock can withdraw money from the bank account. That's also one way of making sure that only the owner of the account can withdraw the money. But most banks outside Switzerland will require official identification. And the reason for that is, as you said, people are worried that they are using the bank account to launder the money made from drug dealing or other criminal activities. And the banks don't want to be involved in protecting or encouraging or aiding and abetting those activities. So there are reasons that there are reasons, and there are activities that you can do only on a real name basis. Can you think of any other activity? Yes.
Voting for and registering to vote for.
Okay. Why is that done on a real name basis?
Some countries only allow citizens to vote, I guess. So,
Okay.
non-citizens can't vote, and you need to identify yourself as a citizen to be eligible to.
Good. Good. So there, what's the goal? What's the goal of the real name identification there? Democracy, right? Making sure that people who have political loyalty to the election get to vote in that election. What other things did you have to present your identification before engaging it? Yes?
SIM card registration.
Excuse me?
SIM card registration.
SIM card registration, okay. So you have a mobile phone, okay. Is it prepaid or postpaid? Prepaid. It's a prepaid, and you were required to show your identification when you buy it.
When I was getting.
Yeah. Why is that? I mean, if it's a postpaid, you can understand that you have to present your identification because the telecoms will have to charge you. If you don't pay money, they'll have to come after you. But if you're buying prepaid, they don't need to see you ever again, right? Why do they ask for identification? Did you feel bad that you had to show your ID just to, get this device that allows you to talk to your friends? I mean, what other devices do you have in your possession that allows you to communicate with your friends?
Your
Computer, yeah. When you buy a computer, sir, when you bought your nice MacBook, did you have to show your identification? No. Why did you have to show identification when you buy a mobile phone, when you can equally communicate with other people? Okay, so there is, it's a hazy, it's not clear why the Korean telecoms require your probably passports, right? You all showed your passport, right? For give you personal communication devices. Yes?
But you don't you have to pay every month for to get your internet and be able to call people? You have to pay regularly every month.
Or you always can use Wi-Fi. You can go to Starbucks. Any other, before the electricity was made available, what did people use to communicate with others? Pen and paper. Do you think that they had to show identification to buy pen and paper? No. Pen and paper is a, communication device. People are not required to identify themselves getting it. But for some reason in Korea and in other countries like Japan, Swiss, and few countries, you are required to identify yourself getting the communication device. Who is from a country in Southeast Asia? Raise your hands. Okay, yes. Do you need an ID to get a prepaid phone?
Yes, but
but we just changed it to that rule like 3 months ago.
3 months ago. Okay, so 3 months prior, you could get it without identification. The same there?
Not at Hong Kong. You can just get it.
You can get it home. Okay, you are from
Thailand.
Thailand. Okay. Why did Thailand change the law?
Well, after we changed governments and we have to confirm ourselves as a user to prevent because of all the security reasons.
Okay, what security reasons?
Like, like to prevent most of the terrorism and stuff that was being told.
Okay. Well, terrorists are also people too, so they'll have to use the phone. But not all the people using the phone are terrorists, right? But I guess the government wants to be able to track down terrorists when they see one. Okay, well, that may be the reason that also the Korean government requires the mobile phones issued within this country to be issued on a real name basis. Any other activity that you need ID for? Yes?
Flying?
Flying, yes. Why is that? For security. Well, how about getting into a bus? There are many more people getting onto the bus than getting onto planes each day, right? Another thing that you can do only with the real name is driving a car. That's why almost all countries have driver licenses, right? Why is that? Because, yes?
It's dangerous.
Yes, driving is dangerous. And driving is not only dangerous, you can also drive away after harming another person. All right? And also the cars, you know, all the cars come with the license plates so that if there is an accident, people involved in that accident can be tracked down. So, in this world, would you live in an anonymous world or would you live in a real name world? Raise your hands. I live in an anonymous world. Okay, raise your hands. I live on a real name world. Okay, all of you, all right. Okay, I'll change your mind. Yes. There are risks and benefits of both a real name system and anonymous system. Most of you raised the hands saying you wanted to live in a real name world, but how would you feel if you are required to wear your name tag every time you go for a walk? For the pretext that a street is a dangerous place for everybody. You can be robbed, or you can rob others, you can be beaten, and you can beat others. Street is dangerous, so you have to wear your name tag all the time. Would you like that? How about getting on a bus? A lot of things can happen on a bus. There can be pickpockets, there can be sexual harassment, there can be unauthorized touchings. Some people may be conspiring to rob a bank sitting in a bus. Some people may be having, I don't know, very, erotic dreams that they're not supposed to have. Immoral dreams while sitting in a bus. A lot of dangerous things, bad things. So you have to wear your name tag getting on a bus. Would you like that? How about getting a cup of coffee? Coffee can be hot. It can be used as a weapon against other people. So whenever you buy coffee, you have to register your name. Okay? So when I said whether you want to live in a real name world, that's what I was talking about. Okay? Now, there is this law in Germany that bans wearing masks during assemblies and demonstrations. What do you think about that? So it requires all the participants in assemblies and demonstrations to participate on a real name basis. So, what they are doing at Ewha University, all the girls come out in masks. That's illegal in Germany. All right. Let's see. Oops, nothing. All right. Maybe your friends. Yeah. Okay, so now one benefit of real name assembly and demonstration is that people will be deterred from doing bad things at assemblies and demonstrations, like throwing, fire bottles. We call it Molotov cocktails, right? Breaking windows, hurting police officers, right? People will be deterred from doing that because, their faces will be shown bare to the police officers who will come arrest them for the bad things they did. But what harms, so that's the benefit, what harms are there for requiring the assembly and demonstration participants to show their faces? Is there harm? Yes?
Yeah. In countries with repressive regimes, they can be arrested later?
Sure.
Even if they didn't do anything illegal, like throw bombs?
Yeah. And also, even if they are not arrested, people will not come out, right? If they have to show there may be a chance that people will not come out if they have to show their faces, for fear of retaliation. Yes, retaliation will be illegal, but what if the retaliation is coming from the state that has a duty to protect you, right? That can be that will really make you feel afraid. So that will be the risk of requiring real name. And if you think about it, at many facets, at many moments, at many important moments in history, anonymous speech moved the ball along. One clear example is the American Revolution. many of the people seeking independence from the British Empire wrote their arguments for independence under anonymous name. Why? Because if they do it under real name, the British forces will come and get them. And many people who are fighting repressive regimes, they do it on an anonymous basis. Actually, it's not just for democracy that anonymity is important. There are times that you want to remain anonymous just so that you are not subjected to people's prejudices. Who has read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte? A masterpiece in English literature. Emily Bronte? Emily Bronte could not get her book published under her name because back then publishers didn't want to deal with things written by women. She sent to 5 publishers only to be rejected, so she changed the name to a neutral sounding name. I think it was Acton something. Only then it was published. So it was published under pseudonym. And there are many famous pseudonyms. You'll be surprised. Voltaire, okay, the French philosopher who wrote Candide, right? Émile Zola, George Sand, also Charles Dickens also wrote under pseudonyms. Charles Dickens is not a pseudonym, but he has written under a pseudonym. George Orwell is also a pseudonym. It's not his real name. And the famous revolutionary Leon Trotsky, that is also a pseudonym. And the famous writer, especially famous in Korea, is O. Henry. That's also a pseudonym. That's not his real name. Mark Twain is a pseudonym. And through these names, they wanted to approach the public without being prejudiced. All right. So anonymity has this much value in communicating with other people. But as you showed, as you showed by a show of hands, there are times that real name is required, right? So the reason that we have regulation on anonymity or restriction on anonymity is to for instance, track down criminals and deter illegal online activities. And also, one particular reason that justifies most of online real name law is to prevent minors from accessing adult materials. So, in Korea, to play an internet game, you have to present your identification. So Starcraft Overwatch, that's the hot one these days, right? To play those games, you have to show your identification online so that to show to the system that you are an adult, so that you can play the game past midnight. Because people under 16 cannot play past midnight in Korea. So there was this interesting incident. There was this pro gamer who happened to be still a minor, went to London to participate in a tournament. When the clock hit 12 midnight in Korean time, he was still in the game, and his game suddenly froze because he was identified by the system as a minor and was playing past Korean midnight. So these are the reasons for restricting anonymity. So what we're going to talk about today is whether this is ethically justified to require people coming online to play games or to communicate one another, require these people to come online only on a real name basis, for the pretext of tracking down criminals, deterring illegal online activities, and preventing minors' access or preventing minors' unauthorized access to adult materials. To proceed further, let's make some distinction. Facebook. Is it a real name? Is it a real name service? But there are people whose accounts were shut down for not using their names, right? What are those accounts? So there are these Native Americans whose accounts were shut down because their names sounded like non-human. So like a name like Dances with Wolves. Okay, accounts opened under those names were shut down. Why would Facebook do that? Is that a real name system? Well, it's not really a real name system, okay? Because if you're just opening an account, you don't need to show any official identification, and you don't need to prove your identity. What Facebook is doing is, Facebook is just making sure that there is a person behind each account. It's not a company. It's not some cause. It's not some activity that's behind an account, but a real person. Why? Because it is Facebook. It's supposed to be a book of human faces. And it is trying to be a platform for people to communicate with one another, not some platform for companies to advertise their products or some political mobilization. It wants to be a genuine platform for people's communication amongst themselves. So making sure, so when it detects an account that sounds like it's not opened by a person, Facebook shuts it down and asks those accounts to be moved to their alternative service, which is Pages. Okay? So companies open Pages, not accounts under Facebook. But you are not required to prove your identity when you open your account. If you have a Facebook account, try to find me. it will be hard to find me because I opened under an acronym, K.S.Park. If you try to find me under Kyungsin Park, you'll never find me. KS Park is not my real name, but Facebook didn't care. As long as it sounded like a person's name, right, ending with a typical Korean surname, Park, which accounts for 10% of all Koreans wherever you go, Facebook is okay. So that's not a real name. We went through this question. What things can you do anonymously? Would you do them if you're required to go real name? What things can you not do anonymously and you still have to do them on the real name basis? Now, the question we are trying to address is, how about online activities? Driving a car, I think there is some justification for making sure that people driving a car do it on real name basis. But you will hate to do it, you will hate to go jogging on a real name basis. You will hate to get a cup of coffee under a real name basis. How about writing something online or playing internet game or watching some adult cartoons? Who would you like to do that on a real name basis? Who would you like to do that? Period. Who would you like to do that anonymously? Writing things online. Reading adult material. Or viewing adult material. Playing internet game. So, this is an ethical question that we have to address in today's class. So some people argue that, hey, online activities, writing something online can be dangerous. You can hurt other people. You can commit, defamation. You can spread obscene material and hurt communities' moral standard. You can play illegal games, right? Betting. You can conspire crimes with other people by coming online. You can spread hate speech, right? Online, and in this day and age of information society, the dangers presented by coming online are 10 times, 100 times more it was before. So everyone coming online has to do it on a real name basis. Some people argue that. Do you know any? And under that theory, one of the most popular social media platform has gone real name about 2 years ago. Do you know any social media platform that requires identification from you to join? Yes?
Does Kuocw need identification?
Kuocw?
Yeah.
Kuocw doesn't need identification from you.
But doesn't we need to phone verification?
Or it doesn't have to be your phone. As long as you can return the password that they send you to that number, you are fine. Google Plus? I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, I'm not going to try to explain, but I don't think so. For Weibo in China, to get a Weibo account, you have to go to a local district office and present your identification, and the government official will give you the credentials for getting a Weibo account. So Chinese people talking on Weibo, they are all doing it constantly under the risk of being identified and tracked down by the Chinese police. And Korea used to have the same system until 2012. Back then, Kuocw didn't exist back then, but something like Kuocw will have required your identification to open your account. Never required identification from you. For writing anything on a major website, you had to register your identification so that if the police find some illegal activity, they can track you down. Is this correct way of doing it? One question is, does real name really work? Does real name allow the authorities to track down bad people? I mean, if the real name doesn't have that effect, it will not have the effect of deterring illegal activities either, right? Because people will not feel deterred any longer from committing illegal activities online if they're not going to be caught anyway, right? Does the real name really work? What do you think? At least in the Korean case, when the Constitutional Court struck down the real name law in 2012, the Constitutional Court noted that real name law doesn't work because people who are determined to do illegal things will somehow get somebody else's credentials and still do it. The people who are not determined to do illegal things, innocent people, they'll be deterred from writing something online just the same way that you wouldn't go out to get a cup of coffee if you have to do it if you have to do it with the identification. So the illegal activities do not decrease because people set on doing illegal things will somehow get other people's credentials, like get other people's registration number, other people's identification, and still do the same thing. So because they are already determined to do illegal things anyway, so getting somebody's identity, which is another illegal thing, that's only a small icing on the cake. All right? Criminals will not be afraid of using somebody else's identity. Just like bank robbers always commit the additional crime of stealing a getaway car, people doing illegal things online, they'll always get their getaway car, which is other people's identifications. So the illegal activities do not decrease. But legal activities decrease because people will feel deterred deterred for the same reason that they will be deterred from getting a cup of coffee, with mandatory identification. So illegal postings remain the same. Legal postings decrease. The proportion of illegal activity will increase or decrease as a result. Proportion. Increase, right? Because the illegal activities will not decrease. So the Constitutional Court used that reasoning to strike it down. And that's the famous Internet real name law case in 2012. I'm happy to report to you that I was personally involved in that constitutional challenge. Wrote the briefs, made the testimonies. So if you have to thank anybody for coming online without identification, you can thank me. Really. Before 2012, you had to have identification just to get an email account in Korea. Now, that it does not work, that real name does not work, is not the only reason it was struck down. There is a line of cases. Mcintyre versus Ohio. This is the US Supreme Court case from back in 1980s. Ohio State legislature thought that there is so much mudslinging in election campaigns, like false accusations, like in the current presidential election, that the legislature made it a law that all campaign literature be signed with a real name, so that if anybody makes a statement about election candidate, the author can be tracked down and made responsible for what he or she said. That was the law in Ohio, and the US Supreme Court struck it down. The reasoning is a little bit legalistic, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But the idea was that, hey, putting your name on the paper, that's also content, right? Now, whether your name goes on that piece of paper, that campaign literature, that is within the matter of authorship. And you should have right to decide whether you disclose your name or not. You should have, just like you can decide whether to wear your name tag when you get a cup of coffee, when you write something, you should have right to decide whether to do it anonymously or not. In doing so, the court talked about all the anonymous literature that was written to fight for democracy, to fight for independence in the past history of the United States and in other countries. The court said anonymous speech has so much potential value. Yes, it has a risk of being used for criminal activities, but it also has a value for promoting human civilization, that taking away the freedom of going online is just too much as excessive restriction on people's freedom of speech. There was a similar case back in 1990 in ACLU versus Miller. There, the law required all online activities, well, the law punished writing something under a fictitious names, false names. So the idea was that, if you assume somebody else's identity online, that hurts, people whose identities were used. And, when you assume other people's identity, you sometimes do bad things. Now, even that law was struck down as unconstitutional, saying that, hey, what is false name? So if Gyeongshin Park opens a Facebook account named KS Park, is that a false name? Or if somebody who hates Obama opens a account under the name I hate Obama, is that false assumption of identity of President Obama? It's not clear what's meant by false name, so that was also struck down. And then 2012, the Internet Real Name law case was handed down. So the first question is, does real name work? It doesn't. The cases say, these two cases say, that the two cases said, is anonymous speech valuable? Yes, it is very valuable. You cannot take away that freedom. So if you look at the structure of the reasoning of Internet Real Name law case, what's the public interest sought by real name requirement? Well, track down criminals, deter illegal online activities, and prevent children's access to adult material. But that public interest is not really delivered, because people who want to do illegal things will somehow, acquire other people's credentials. And think about it. I mean, when you're minor, none of you is still a minor under the law, right? I mean, when you're children, when you really wanted to see something that you couldn't, what did you do? You use your parents' identification. Yeah? So even the goal of preventing children's access to adult material is not delivered. Right? So it doesn't work. And also the private interest. The private interest restricted, the private interest destroyed or undermined by real name law. Is that great? Is it severe infringement on people's freedom? Well, the Constitutional Court thought so. The Constitutional Court said anonymous speech is very valuable, not just for individuals, but for the society. The Korean court said, I'll put online the case itself. The Korean Supreme Court, the Korean Constitutional Court said, online anonymous speech allows people to overcome hierarchies coming from gender, age, social status, and race that exist offline, so that people can talk with one another on an equal basis. Thereby, it facilitates the formation of substantive democracy, not just formal democracy. Formal democracy is where you get to vote for your representatives. But that's only formal, because many countries where people have voting rights are still under repressive regimes. Substantive democracy, by substantive democracy, the Korean Constitutional Court meant that people can really criticize and monitor one another on an equal basis. Are there times that you feel like you cannot really talk to the other person because that other person is of a different gender, different race, or different social status? Yeah, are there times like that? Online, by going anonymous, you can be freed from that. That was the argument made by the Korean Constitutional Court. So, destroying that right of anonymity is too severe an infringement on private interest. So, public interest achieved by the real name law is small, right? So it doesn't achieve much public good. But private interest destroyed by the real name law is great. Therefore, the law is excessive restriction on people's freedom compared to what it achieves for the society. Therefore, the law was unconstitutional. That was the structure of Internet real name law. Having said that, there are still, that's only one real name law that's struck down in Korea. There are four other real name laws still exist in Korea for communication. I emphasize communication because requiring identification for other things like coming on a plane, voting, driving, opening a bank account, these are not communicative activities. These are activities that have physical or social impact. If you open an account, you can use it for fraud, tax evasion, you can use it for laundering your drug money. If you drive a car, you can hit people and run away. If you get on a plane, in an enclosed space, you can threaten other people. You can threaten the pilot to drive the airplane into a high-rise building. A lot of dangerous activities of physical impact can arise from getting on a plane. But communication, right? What is communication? Just sending a message to another and receiving a message from another person. How harmful can that be so that you have to go real name? You have to present your identification for doing just that. And there are 4 real name laws in Korea. One is real name law for playing internet game. That's still in effect. So people under age of 16, they have to stop playing internet game midnight. Yes?
So can they just do that, saying that they are older than they are?
Sure.
Because in Facebook, they also ask you for your age, but that people
Lie. Well, the Koreans are very diligent, so they created a system so that you cannot lie. You have to, it's all connected to the SIM card registration. You have to use a mobile phone registered to an adult. Yes, so if you want to lie, you will have to steal your parents' phone. Yeah. So anyway, so internet game real name law, and we have adult content real name law. Okay. Anyone viewing legal material, okay, it's not illegal material, but just adult material, have to also register their identities. The third, election real name law. So during election period, which is like 2 or 3 weeks, if you're gonna make any comment on election, you have to present your identification. The fourth is SIM card registration. Whenever you get a mobile phone, even if it's prepaid, you have to register your real name. And because the phones are registered under real name, that become the basis for checking the identities for playing internet game or viewing adult material. So they all work hand in hand. Do you have any real name law in your home countries? I know that Swiss has real name law for getting a mobile phone as well. It's interesting because the countries that have higher crime rates don't have real name law on mobile phones. You would think that the countries suffering from higher crime rate will, institute real name identification for getting a mobile phone, right? But that didn't happen. It's like Korea, Japan, and Swiss that have low crime rates that institute SIM card registration law. Okay, any question, comment so far? Okay, there's a question. Isabel. Someone shares a story anonymously online or make an anonymous quote online. If someone else published that story, okay. Okay. If someone shares a story anonymous online, make an anonymous quote online. If someone has published that story by his name, can the first person claim copyright infringement? Okay, this is really a copyright question. The answer is, why not? Okay? If you just pick up a book off a street, right? That's written anonymously. If you copy that, that's still copyright infringement. If it's not something that you created, that is copyright violation. Anyway, coming back to the last slide here. Now, so far we talked about real name law that requires you to produce or register your identities before using some services, before receiving some goods and services. Now, so these companies now have your identities, right? Now, when the police ask for your identifications, your identity credentials, can the police do that? Can the police access that freely? Or do they have to go through something like, warrant process, right? Can they access your identity only when they have reason to believe that you are involved with the crime, or can they just do it warrantlessly, freely, even when they don't have any reason to believe that you are involved with the crime? What do you think? Let's say you are walking down the street. Can the police come and search your bag even when they don't have any reason that you are involved with the crime? No. Okay? Let's say, you are wearing a mask, so the police don't know your identification. So the police want to know or, your face is uncovered, but the police just want to identify you. Can the police come and require you to produce identification even when they don't have any reason to believe that you are involved in the crime? Probably you will say no. And that's what you learned in the previous privacy and surveillance class. All of you are protected by presumption of innocence, right? So your privacy, like other basic rights, should not be restricted without any reason. It can be restricted with a reason. Okay? It can be restricted with a reason to believe that you may be involved with a crime. But police cannot just search your bag or get your identity credential just for walking down the street, which is something that anybody can do. Now, can the police access your identity credentials from the companies like Naver, Kuocw, or from your telecoms, just for, using the phone, just using the account? Probably you'll say not, right? Okay, if you know that this is wrong, you can participate in this campaign, Ask Your Telco campaign. Okay? So pick up your phone. You can pick up your phone now. Dial 114. That will get you your telecom. And you can ask your telecom representative to find out whether the police have accessed your identity. And the telcos will have to tell you. Again, thanks to the lawsuit that I filed back in 2010, and we won. It's now in the Supreme Court, but in the meantime, the telcos have agreed to tell the users if they gave away the user identities to the police or criminal investigation authorities. If you do that, and you'll get a piece of paper from the telco certifying whether your identities have been given over to the police or not. If you bring it, you will again get an extra credit. Okay? Now, I don't know whether they have English-speaking representatives, so good luck, right? Or you can have, you can get help from your Korean friends. All right, we'll end here. Thank you very much for coming during the no doubt difficult midterm period. I'll see you next week. All right, thank you.